going to be talking through Advantech's wireless sensing products. We're going to do this as an introduction. Now, this deck is designed as kind of a first call deck, or sort of a tool that our sales team and our channel partners can use when introducing the products. Hopefully it's still useful to potential end customers or just people looking to learn more about this technology. So it'll be a fairly short presentation, I guess. And towards the end, I'll bring up two more tools that will be helpful as kind of additional resources. But to begin, we'll look at basically some low power wide area networking, or LPWAN terms, and then we'll get into the two main Advantech product families in the wireless sensing category. We'll do a little bit of a comparison, and then, as I said, we'll look at basically a selection guide to help nail down the right product and part number. And then I'll bring up a table that shows all the different versions and variants, and that might be a little more in the weeds than someone who's just getting an introduction to this really needs, but it can be very helpful when you're actually selecting a product. So without any further ado, we will get started. Now, if you've seen me present this diagram, or this this picture before, you could skip ahead 2 minutes if you really want to. I recommend hearing it through, though, because it can be helpful to review. But basically, this is a picture that I use as sort of an analogy for explaining the wireless data options out there, and I use the analogy of a highway. So right in the middle, you've got kind of a fast lane, okay? And the reason I use this is because really, cellular carriers, network operators really think of their networks as a highway in some cases, right? They build them, they charge people to use them, right? And in fact, of course, we use them every day on our phones and tablets and smart devices and so forth. So that's kind of like the fast lane, or the main highway, okay? And that will be mostly out of scope for what we're going to talk about today, because we're talking about low power sensing type applications. But also, sort of adjacent to this highway, and part of the network operator's network, is this like service road, I call it, okay, that narrowband IoT and LTE category M operate on, okay? There's different categories of LTE. We won't get into that too much, but just know that M, think of it like a category machine, for lack of a better way to put it, right? It's for machine type communication, okay? And narrowband IoT is also similar in that respect, probably more for sensing applications would narrowband IoT be used for. So that's all the carrier networking world, okay? That black pavement there. The highway, the high-speed lane, and then kind of the service road, which is lower speed, right, and lower cost. Now, on the other hand, there's technology that is not owned and operated by cellular carriers. I think of it like a footpath or a bike path on the side of the highway, right? It's not owned by the DOT necessarily, or the carriers, but it's still used for communication. So LoRaWAN, Wi-Fi, different meshing technologies, including Advantech's Wzzard Mesh, they all fit into that sort of part of the analogy, if you will, right? They're still used for communication, but they're not, you don't have to use a SIM card. That's another way to look at it. For the highway, you got to have a SIM card to get on. For LoRaWAN, Wzzard Mesh, Wi-Fi, of course, you don't need a SIM card, okay? So that's, again, if that's helpful, great. If not, just think of something else, I guess. So anyway, let's look at a quick comparison in terms of data rates and range as it comes to these technologies. So I think we're all familiar with Wi-Fi, and this is in our WISE 4200 product line. But I want to focus on, or at least call out anyway, LTE category M, and LoRaWAN, and then Wzzard. So what's important to know about Wzzard, and it doesn't necessarily jump out from this diagram, is Wzzard is a meshing technology, which means it doesn't have to be as long range as LTE Cat M or narrowband IoT or LoRaWAN. But the most important thing is that these are all relatively longer range than, say, Bluetooth or RFID or Zigbee, but they're also lower data rates. Okay, so just yesterday, we had a call from someone who's trying to connect voice over IP and camera devices at a quarry. Well, okay, LoRaWAN, probably not great for that. Cat and Narrowband IoT. They probably want something like a powerful Wi-Fi solution. So anyway, that just gives you an idea of where to orient these in the data rate and range trade-off. So in the interest of comparing some of these, again, I won't talk too much about Wi-Fi. You guys know it's fundamentally point-to-point or point-to-multi-point, right? In terms of setting up access points and the range. So for each of these categories, let me just back up. For each of these categories, we'll just show a little bit of the trade-offs, range, throughput, and then at the bottom row here, the associated Advantech products. And we'll talk about each of these in the next few minutes, but if you need to refer back to it, sometimes there's a lot of different products going on and part numbers and so forth, so it's hopefully it'll be helpful to to try to sort of triangulate those, and we'll refer to the part numbers at a couple different points in the presentation. So Wzzard Mesh, as I said, the important differentiator that jumps out, right, is that it is a meshing technology. So it's ranges indoors similar to Wi-Fi, outdoor longer range, really low data rate. Okay, so really good for sleeping, waking up, sending a reading, and then going back to sleep. Okay, so battery power, you're thinking of those kind of applications. It's used in a node to gateway kind of topology, or obviously because it's mesh, node to node to node, to gateway. But that's that should be clear. Okay, LoRaWAN is we say in an outdoor environment, that's probably where it's used mostly. Although certainly in a big production facility or a commercial greenhouse or a distribution facility that's large and needs to cover a big area, LoRaWAN is a good fit. It is point to point. We have a couple example applications. Higher data rate than Wzzard Mesh, and similar to Wzzard Mesh, though it's used in a node to gateway topology. And then finally, category, it's called NB-1 or Cat M1. These are sort of narrowband IoT and NB-1 are interchangeable terms. Again, sweet spot is obviously going to be outdoor, like all cellular technology, and it is cellular in the sense that it talks to a cell tower and requires a SIM card for communication. The range, it's just like your cell phone, right? Think about sometimes you have coverage, sometimes you don't. Depending on your proximity to a base station. You'll see that lower data rate here. We could do a comparison of narrowband IoT and Cat N. The point is that it's very low throughput, and the WISE 4671 is the product that Advantech offers that supports those technologies. Okay, so there's a lot on that slide. Hopefully, just talking through it is helpful, and you can always refer to this later. Let's talk about the WISE 4000 product line for a few minutes. So this is a super cool product line that actually supports all of the technologies that you see in the images below at the bottom of this deck, but it supports it in a way that's really flexible. And so we'll talk about some of these. The three main components, kind of starting from the bottom right-hand corner and then going up to the top. So think about a remote device that you want to connect to. So it could be a controller or a sensor. The point is you have to make some physical connection to it. And the WISE 4000 line supports a number of different input, output, serial, sensor, Modbus type connections. It also supports a bunch of different, as we said before, a bunch of different wireless protocols. So, Wi-Fi, LoRaWAN, narrowband IoT, these are all, and by the way, LTE and narrowband IoT, these are I'm including the branding or the logos from Verizon and AT&T because they operate this technology on their networks. Okay, refer back to that picture diagram. This is the service road on these carriers' networks. So anyway, those are the different wireless interface options. And then finally, obviously, what do we do with the data, right? So we need to send it to Amazon Web Services, Azure, some kind of solution, including in Advantech's WisePass, which is another sort of value-add cloud solution. And that's a little bit out of scope for this presentation, but just know that these three elements of the WISE 4000 line all work together. Okay, let's talk about the narrowband IoT LTE Cat and options here. You'll see two images here. This 4471 is not available in North America. The 4671 is. Okay, so the 4671 is what we'll talk about today. So earlier I mentioned that narrowband IoT LTE Cat M are low power, and the WISE 4671 supports solar recharging and built-in battery. These are frequently used outdoor, right? So this is IP65 rated, available with waterproof connectors, a micro USB port for configuration, optional GPS. So a lot of the physical characteristics of this device, fit hand in glove with the technology available in narrowband IoT. Super excited about this. It's available with the inputs and outputs you see down here. I don't need to read through these, but really, really handy for a number of different applications. One of them, being water treatment. You can think of a lot of different applications for this, but think about needing, in the process of water treatment, there are a bunch of different points where the data is really valuable. It could be for regulatory compliance, condition-based, machine monitoring, whatever. Basic operations, right? Refilling a chlorine tank, making sure it's got the right pH level, monitoring pressure flow through the system, and so forth. So in this case, the example is using CoAP over UDP, and we won't get into CoAP on this slide, but again, narrowband IoT LTE Cat M using the carrier SIM, Verizon or AT&T, T-Mobile, or any MVNO, and we can talk about that in another presentation, for water treatment. Okay, great fit there. All right, LoRaWAN is on the jogging path, right? The bike path. It's not, you don't need a SIM for this. It's connecting directly to either I'll just go back here and discuss it. So it's connecting either to a Advantech gateway, and then directly into a web server, or through a web server to a web application, or it's connecting into a public LoRaWAN network that's set up by, there are several things network, there's several. The point is that lower total operating costs, in the sense that there's no recurring charge for data plan, relatively more network ownership, right? Because it's an operator, a private operator, an end user would set this up for a golf course, a greenhouse, a water treatment plant. There are trade-offs between this and narrowband IoT. Similar to the WISE 4671, IP65 rated, rechargeable battery, GPS, waterproof connectors, and so forth. And then also a similar set of inputs and outputs. So very, very helpful set of technology. Obviously, this, as I mentioned earlier, used in concert with the LoRaWAN gateway, right? So I'll just go back. So several LoRaWAN nodes talking to a LoRaWAN gateway, right? Let's use that as an example. So this gateway is, there's a couple of important things to notice, to call out about this. So the LoRaWAN gateway, the WISE 6610, it has a full network server, backup server, enterprise routing capability built into it. So that's required for a LoRaWAN public application. So it's fully ready to be used in a LoRaWAN private application, where you're an operator and you're connecting to your web server directly to these LoRa end nodes. Industrial temperature rating, MQTT, Node-RED support, and then again, that's in a private setting, and then in that side things network activity. There's, as I mentioned, there's several other LoRaWAN public networks that we could work with. Smart agriculture, I mentioned that as an example application. So a really slick way to connect to a bunch of different sensing, for high value cash crop type applications, soil characteristics, moisture characteristics, power to the device, and so forth. So again, collecting all this, publishing or sending it through LoRaWAN protocol, publishing it to a dashboard, this is again, I won't get into the details of the application, but I want to show sort of a picture of, all right, here's an example of how customers are using this LoRaWAN technology. Just real briefly, the Wi-Fi version of the WISE has been around for a while. It is, Wi-Fi is not low power, it's not long range, so that differentiates it from the other two technologies we just looked at. But it is pretty ubiquitous, right? So there's a lot of applications that need to do data acquisition, publish to a web server, do some kind of data processing for I/O. So think of this, if you Google Advantech ADAM, A-D-A-M, a lot of people are familiar with our ADAM modules. They're simply, I/O to serial I/O to Ethernet devices. A WISE 4000 line is like a wireless ADAM, right? So it's Wi-Fi to I/O. Okay, super useful, very, straightforward to use. Because this has been around for a little bit longer and the other technology is newer, I'm going to just kind of glance over this, and we'll talk now about the Wzzard Mesh. So Wzzard, the Wzzard product line, and then I'm using the term Wzzard to refer to both the Wzzard Mesh protocol, but you also see there's a unique Wzzard form factor, or the form factor for sensor node that's from the Wzzard line that supports LoRaWAN. A little confusing. I'll explain it all. Don't worry. First of all, so Wzzard Mesh is, as I showed earlier in that comparison table, is low power and meshing technology that is great. It's based SmartMesh IP. It's based on this 802.15.4 standard. Battery powered or external powered, several different interface options, but really rugged enclosure. Stick it to a metal device, just magnetic mounting. Class 1 Div 2 approved, and it connects back to, over the meshing topology, back to a SmartSwarm gateway. And then these SmartSwarm gateways are, talk to, they provide WAN access to a web application over Ethernet or LTE. Okay, so at a glance, that's the Wzzard Mesh industrial node. You'll recognize kind of that black WISE 6610 gateway in the bottom right-hand corner. Now on this slide, we're talking about the LoRaWAN version of that Wzzard end node. So you've got still magnetic mounting, still weatherproof rating, Class 1 Div 2. This currently doesn't have a battery-powered option. That's coming soon. This is doing this in mid-September 2019. So just know that very shortly that will be battery-powered. And then it's got the 45 Modbus interface and several different I/O options as well. But again, this is LoRaWAN talking back to either the 6610 Advantech LoRaWAN gateway or a public LoRaWAN provided by Actility or Things Network or other LoRaWAN operators. So the Wzzard, we also have a pretty slick refrigeration type sensor. So this is so think of this as a different form factor, obviously, than the blue Wzzard node I just showed. But the inputs are pretty useful for cooling, HVAC, refrigeration type sensing. So it's battery powered. It's got internal antenna. You essentially either adhesively mount it or bracket mount it. And it makes this connection to HVAC equipment, right? Thermocouples, thermistors. It's got internal temp and humidity sensing. And then there's also a version of this that supports a monitoring of a stack light. So we don't provide a stack light, but it's a little strip essentially that has 3 analog inputs for telling red, orange, green what's going on a stack light. So you can, and I'll show a picture of that in a kit on the next slide. But again, these are Wzzard Mesh, and they connect to that same SmartSwarm gateway that I showed 2 slides earlier. A little bit on the SmartSwarm gateway, right? So there's, this is the central sort of WAN access gateway for Wzzard Mesh, both the blue node that you saw and that little white rectangular HVAC sensor. And as I said, Ethernet or LTE for egress, and 802.15.4 Smart Mesh IP for the wireless technology. So, example application. This is kind of cool, actually. Earlier, I mentioned that these are battery-powered, low power, but they're especially good for connecting and doing like condition-based monitoring. What's going on? Is something going wrong that I should know about, or for regulatory compliance? So let's look at this diagram here. This is a case where the the Wzzard end nodes are connected in a smart quarry, or it is now a smart quarry, I guess you could say, with this technology. So they're sending level, current level, vibration, temperature to the network gateway. So is a bearing starting to fail? Is it heating up or vibrating more? What's the level of our hoppers of the bulk material as it's going through the crushing process? All of this is really, really valuable for people operating this equipment, both for the operation, and you can also imagine. You can imagine a lot of ways where someone who's operating an industrial quarry would need to be able to show, let's say, that they are only discharging water that's been, that meets certain environmental standards, so they don't get fined for it, or maintaining a certain noise level that's within compliance with the area that they're located. So there's a lot of different ways you can think about this technology fitting into. Again, I'm just using the example of the quarry. There are obviously many others. So speaking of many others, so what we've done is we've created several different starter kits that show customers how to, get started, right? So energy monitoring, HVAC monitoring, condition-based monitoring, refrigeration. You see that with the refrigeration and the stack light monitoring kit, you'll see the that little rectangular white Wzzard sensor there. And again, the point is to provide everything the customer, everything the customer needs to learn how to use this technology and validate it for their own application. So this is kind of a proof of concept in a box, really slick way to get started. Okay, so a couple pieces of more information. So I won't click on it here, but the Wyze website is here. The Wzzard website is linked here. Feel free to check those out. Now what I would like to do is switch gears just for a couple more minutes and look at two tools that I think will be helpful for you. So let's go back on this Wyze 4000 product for a second. So this is the selection guide for the Wyze 4000. Now remember I said that this was a flexible product, and this picture kind of shows this a little bit. So each of these devices is composed of the wireless interface module, I guess you could call it, and the physical interface module, okay? So whether you're using narrowband IoT or Wi-Fi or LoRaWAN, you as a customer or salesperson or resale partner need to identify, okay, what's the wireless element and what's the physical interface element, okay? So let's just work through an example. Suppose you have a LoRaWAN application and you need, that's in North America, I think this audience is primarily North America seeing this video. It's in North America and you want to make an RS-45 connection to a Modbus device. The 4610 NA, right? That's this image here, as you see. That's the wireless module, and then the Wyze S672 is the physical, connector module. So you would order 4610 NA and 672A. All right. So pretty straightforward, and pricing and all that stuff is set up and good to go. Okay, one more example with narrowband IoT. Okay, 4471 not available in North America. Let's skip that. 4671, as I said during the presentation. All right, I would order this part number and one of these part numbers here, right? So again, it's pretty flexible in terms of how to order. For our resale partners, let's say you have a bunch of customers, you know that you're getting into the LTE Cat M space. You can order these to support different modules, and then order different physical interfaces to support the different connection to different kinds of machines and sensors, right? So that's how that works. Again, same with the Wi-Fi down here, and so that's the selection guide. It's pretty helpful. Kudos to our PD team to put that together. It looks great. The other thing to show you, and this may be maybe more for our sales team or for our channel partners. This is just one table that captures all of the different technologies in column B. So LoRaWAN, Narrowband IoT, Wi-Fi, Wzzard Mesh, and then the associated accessories. That's sometimes hard to find. And then the different part numbers and a description and whether they're released. So you'll see some of these are planned. I don't think I showed any. Hopefully I didn't spend too much time talking about something that's not released. This is a LoRaWAN vibration sensor that's coming soon. We'll do a separate video for that. The narrowband IoT interface board is released. We have samples, but the carrier certs are coming later this year, so stay tuned for that. But again, this is just, again, probably more for an internal audience, showing the different technologies and the associated part numbers and descriptions and pricing and stock levels and so forth. So with that, appreciate you for joining. I'll end this video now, and feel free to reach out to your Advantech sales rep for more information.